All right, good evening, everybody. For the record, Thursday, January 27th, 2022, 5:15 PM, time for the regular meeting of the Wenatchee City Council. As always, we start our meetings with our pledge to our flag. So Councilmember Harold, would you lead us?
I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Harold. For our first item, well, for roll call this evening, we got 5 council members present, and I believe we have both council members Huffaker and Kulas on the phone. Councilmember Kulas, are you with us?
Yes, Your Honor.
Councilmember Huffaker, are you with us?
I'm here, Your Honor.
Excellent, thank you. First item on our agenda are the consent items, which include approving today's agenda, vouchers, and our minutes from our previous meetings. If you didn't have any questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda, vouchers, and minutes from previous meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Poyer, a second by Councilmember Cuevas to approve this evening's agenda, vouchers, and our minutes from the previous meetings. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Citizen requests. This would be a time for any member of the audience wish to address the city council on something that's not on today's agenda or on today's agenda. My perusal of the audience looks like they're all city staff people today, so no public here today. No public on the phone. We have one presentation today, Heart Month Proclamation. Who has that?
I do, Your Honor.
Councilmember Cuevas, would you read that into the record, please?
Certainly.
Whereas coronary heart disease is the #1 killer of both American males and females, and whereas 95% of cardiac arrest victims die before they reach a hospital, and whereas 75% of cardiac arrests occur in the home setting, and whereas lives can be saved through your help, and whereas the City of Wenatchee Employee Health Promotion Committee and the American Heart Association are committed to employee and public education about heart disease and stroke, and this year urge everyone to be a heart saver by knowing the warning signs of a heart attack, calling 911 and giving CPR, and whereas the City of Wenatchee encourages residents to adopt healthier lifestyles to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke, and whereas the American Heart Association is the largest voluntary not-for-profit organization whose mission is to reduce disability and death from cardiovascular diseases and stroke. Now therefore, I, Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor of City of Wenatchee, do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Wenatchee Heart Month, and hereby urge all community members to become heart savers and learn CPR. In witness whereof, I hereby set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Wenatchee to be affixed on this 27th day of January 2022. Frank J. Kuntz, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Cuevas, and we'll make sure we get that to the appropriate folks regarding Wenatchee Heart Month. All right, we have a number of action items this evening, no public hearings. The first action item is regarding accepting the work performed by the contractor JM Pacific Construction on our South Miller Street, Montana Street pedestrian crossing. Usually these are sort of ratified as a consent item. I thought it was appropriate tonight with a new council member and a sort of new council member that we at least go through the process of how we go through contracts, ultimately approve them, what it means, so that going forward, when we see these again, we'll put them back on the consent item. So Jacob and Steve Smith, we'll turn it over to you guys. Or Jake, or whoever's here. Jake, who's doing it?
Okay, now I can go. Okay. Yeah, as the mayor mentioned, typically these items are, sorry, I'll introduce myself. Jacob Heiler, Engineering Services Manager.
Steve Smith, City Attorney.
And then, yeah, so we're here tonight to talk about the Miller and Montana pedestrian project and the final acceptance for that. And so like I said, the These are typically on the consent agenda, but I'd like to take this opportunity to kind of walk you through the contracting process and why we're here for these acceptance procedures. And so I left a flow chart out in front of most of your seats. And I tried to organize this in such a manner that anything shown in red is where we're coming to the council for either input or approval. Blue are kind of big topic, high-level stuff. And then as you work down the flow chart in the white areas, that's diving into a little bit more detail. And so I'll quickly step through this. I don't want to belabor it too much, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on it. So starting at the top left, most of our projects come from one of two locations. It's either our transportation improvement plan or our utility comprehensive plans. Our TIP is adopted by ordinance every year, typically in July-ish. Our utility comprehensive plans are every 5 to 10 years. For instance, our sewer comp plan was adopted in 2017, our water comp plan in 2018, our stormwater comp plan in 2020. You probably won't see another one until the 2024 timeline, somewhere in that ballpark. And so anyway, projects originate from there. From that point, we look for funding. And so if it's a project that would qualify for grant funding, we typically go seek through a variety of different programs. Before we put in grant applications, we're usually coming to the Public Works Economic Development Committee to get, we'll give our recommendations, get a head nod from that it's okay to move forward with those grant applications. If it's more utility related, typically there isn't as much grant money available for that, and so we seek local funding. In any case, once funding is identified, then we're coming to the Council for Budget Authority, either through the annual budget process, or if it's a mid-year ask that we're putting in, that'll be a project-specific budget authority. Jumping into the design realm, we go one of two ways, either in-house design or we hire a consultant to do that. If we hire a consultant and it meets the thresholds of a contract that's over $100,000, we're back to the red point here where we're coming to you for approval of that. If we are working with the PUD or with the rec district or others and need an interlocal agreement to move our project forward, we're coming back to the council to ask for approval of that. What's not shown in here is right-of-way acquisition. It's a process in its own. But anywho, we work through our design milestones of 30, 60, 90, final, and then we go out to bid. Once we go out to bid, we've got two kind of silos in our construction. One is the admin and inspection portions of it. If we're doing that in-house, you can see it here. Consultant services will typically come back to you again for award of that contract. So tonight, right after me, Jeremy's going to come up and talk about our digester project. That's what he's asking for tonight. On the contract side, we need council authority to award the contract to our contractors. Once bids are awarded and we give notice to proceed, if a change order hits a financial threshold, we have to come back. Alyssa's in here tonight to ask about that. And then we work through our substantial completion, punch list work, physical completion, and so forth. So we move to the closeout phase, and that's what I'm here tonight to talk about for our Miller and Montana project. So we've gone through all of these different phases at this point. WashDOT is the grant agency in this one. They've inspected and said, we're good to go. Our in-house team has looked through it and given the substantial completion, physical completion, and so forth. Our specs just require that the mayor give final acceptance of the project. Therefore, we're asking for you to authorize his signature on that final contract voucher. So that was a quick run through, as quick as I can do it.
Well, it's great to see it, to see all the times that the council sees it. So sometimes when we get to final acceptance, you guys have seen it 7 times and you're like, sometimes we get final acceptance to a project that in our mind was done 2 years ago, right? Because it just takes paperwork and then, so what's a normal retainage? Is it 5%, 3%, every contract different?
5% is normal. On this one, so this one's unique in that it was a federally funded project, and so we are not allowed to hold retainage on federal funded projects. They still have to go to Labor and Industries, Department of Revenue, and Employment Security to get their bond released. So we have to receive releases from them before we can release their bond. But yeah, 5% is your normal retainage.
Okay. So we'll do this, and then the contractor has to go do the other ones, and then it gets released from those. Okay.
So with that, anywho, if you want specifics on our project, I'm happy to go through that. If not, we're here tonight recommending that the council give final acceptance for the Miller and Montana project and authorize the mayor's signature. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Is there any questions for those guys? I know that's a big process, and I'd like to get this back in because it was perfect because we're actually doing a contract award for construction, for the digester, and then we're doing final acceptance, and we got a change order. So we're hitting a lot of these buckets tonight. And when does like warranty start on this stuff? Does it start after final acceptance or?
Yeah, so again, it's a little bit specific to projects. So on a federal aid project, we're not allowed to have a warranty period. So there isn't one for this project.
Okay.
The typical time that it starts is at final acceptance. And so it behooves the contractor to move along quicker through the closeout process to get to the acceptance that you'd give tonight to get that clock started. If they drag their feet for 2 years to get to this point, then we have a year beyond that. It's good for us, but it hurts them.
Any questions for either Jacob or Steve or regarding the process or this particular contract? I'd say going forward, then we'll be putting these back on the consent items now that we all sort of understand, what's going on. All right, if there's no questions, I entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to accept the work performed by the contractor JM Pacific Construction Incorporated on City Project number 1912, South Miller Street / Montana Street pedestrian crossing, and further authorize the mayor to sign the final contract voucher.
Second. Motion by Councilmember Harrell, second by Councilmember Hornby to accept the work performed by contractor JM Pacific Construction Incorporated on City Project number 1912, South Miller Street, Montana Street pedestrian crossing, and further authorize the mayor to sign the final contract voucher. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here.
Nice.
Jeremy. Let's award a contract for consultant services on the administration and inspection of the digester project.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors. Jeremy Hoover, Senior Utility Engineer. I'm here to talk about the wastewater treatment plant project to construct a new digester, along with the mechanical building and the associated work that has to happen for the construction administration and inspection activities. The project, as you are probably aware, is building a new building along with a tank for digesting of solids, and the construction is anticipated to take approximately 77 weeks or 365 working days. The contract was advertised and it went to bid. We opened bids on November 10th. Apollo Construction was the low bid contractor for a total of $14.4 million. The design engineer was HDR Engineering. They completed the work in, let's call it about the middle of last year. With the amount of effort that's associated with doing the inspection work and the construction management paperwork, all of the startup procedures associated with this type of facility, we're looking to have HDR provide us assistance for that particular level of effort. Typically, we would do work in-house for inspection, but this is a relatively complex project with lots of literally interconnecting working parts and controls and pumping and piping and you name it for an industrial process, we probably got it over at the digester. So HDR, as part of their design contract, had initially included in their scope of services construction management for the project to be discussed and negotiated at a later date. This is the later date. The amount of their fee is approximately $13.8 million, which is a little bit under 10% of the construction cost. I'm sorry, pardon, not 13.8,
139,000.
excuse me. Sorry, I apologize for that. $1.38 million, just 1 0 off there. And and we're looking to have construction starting probably next month. Pre-con with Apollo is scheduled for second week in February, and I would like to have HDR perform the construction management services and have them under contract before that point.
And so construction starts, you think, in February?
Yes.
And what are we going to see first?
First thing you're going to see is a lot of people out there putting stakes in the ground. Then we're going to start doing a little bit of clearing for relocation of a big duct bank, a power duct bank that kind of runs across the northeastern corner of the site. That's the first thing they have to do before they can do any kind of excavation for the tank. Then they're going to start doing the excavation for the tank, getting rid of any kind of debris from the old landfill material that's out there. And then continue on getting the tank in there. We've got to put some shoring up. We've got to put some soil nails in there to keep the excavation open. They'll start pouring the footings, placing rebar, putting the footings in. I would imagine they're going to get the tank up for the most part before they start on the mechanical building. The mechanical building, if we were able to get it dried in and the roof in place before snow next year, before the end of the construction season, they'll be able to continue working on through the winter and not have to shut down. That way they can get all the high-end equipment inside the mechanical building. If the roof is not on before, let's call it mid-November, they're going to end up with a winter shutdown and come back in the spring to finish that up and complete the rest of the project and get the thing online. Either way you look at it, it's going to be probably mid-23 by the time the thing's up and running.
Wow.
Be fun to watch.
It's going to be a good project.
Any questions for Jeremy?
Apollo, we worked with Apollo, City of Wenatchee's worked with Apollo before, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, our current wastewater treatment supervisor used to work for Apollo several years ago.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I make a motion for the city council to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign a contract on the behalf of the city with HDR Engineering, Inc. for construction inspection services for the waste treatment plant digester number 4, project number 1810.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hornby, second by Councilmember Rojan. I have to get that in once a meeting.
That's good.
The council to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign a contract on behalf of the city of HDR Engineering, Inc. for construction inspection services for the wastewater treatment plant digester number 4, project 1810. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Mr. Posenjack, financial policy. You gave me some good reading.
Yeah, that was good reading.
Hope you enjoyed that. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brad Posenjack, Finance Director. This evening, we have a resolution to approve our updated financial policy and procedure manual. Prior to early 2021, we had about 8 separate financial policies that had been adopted at various times. Some had been, maybe some hadn't been adopted, some had. They were all in different locations, and so we brought them all into one manual to make it a little bit easier to use and to find the different policies. We knew when we put it together, we knew that there were going to be several updates and some reorganization that would need to happen, and that is why I'm here this evening. After going through it and reviewing it with other departments and then with Finance Committee, we've got several different changes in here. Some, like in the purchasing section, I think there's updates because the federal purchasing guidelines for federal grant funds, those were updated, so we updated those dollar amounts. Others rewording, trying to see where processes may have changed and trying to better describe what our processes do look like currently. So that's what some of these are. Though really the only substantive change would be in the surplus property disposal at the end of the document. Chapter 8 was added. Before we didn't have the surplus property policies in this manual. They had been put in our city code years ago, and our city code doesn't anticipate using an auction website like we currently do. So the city code is very outdated, and so we needed to update that, but it made more sense to put that in the policy manual and then remove it from the city code. So if the policy manual is updated, then the next action will be to adopt an ordinance that would remove that language from our city code. So I think probably the biggest change from the city code, well, the outdated city code, the change from our current practice to our proposed practice, the main change would be that any items under $2,500, the departments would have the ability to just go and auction them without having to provide the list for approval to city council. In the past, the departments put together a list of anything that they're gonna sell. It comes to city council. It's typically on the consent agenda, and that's so it's sort of an extra step that we're trying to remove. I think the main players in that are going to be, I think it's IS. They've got all sorts of little computer parts, odds and ends that they auction off, and it'll save them a step. And I've seen that policy in other cities. Some, I think their threshold maybe, some are 5,000, some are 2,500. 2,500 seemed like reasonable place for us to start. But still, any vehicles, equipment, those are going to be, those will still come to council on the consent agenda. Well, unless they're old
My
meter.
question is everything going to be just under 2,500? Is everything going to be valued at 2,495 or something?
So I imagine the auditors will take a look at that. If the estimated value is $2,499 on every vehicle, and then we end up selling them for $10,000 a piece, then we'll probably have some issues with that. So,
Hey, Brad, it's Keith Baker. Hey, so that threshold does seem kind of low. So my question is if they don't have to present a list of those items to us, are they still documented somewhere, kind of giving the public a way to track things, some way to hold people accountable? There's something that says we purchased this and it was sold at this time for this much.
yes, absolutely. We still have to keep track of all. I think somewhere in here, there's a policy about our small and attractive assets. If it's not in here, we should add it. But we do have a policy on our small and attractive assets, and it is something that the state auditors look at frequently. And so each department does have a list of, I can't remember what our threshold is, if it's $50 or $100 or $200. So we do have a threshold of all the equipment that we have to document and when we sell it. So that is still documented, and it is audited and reviewed regularly.
Okay, thanks. That was my only concern, is somewhere that was still being tracked. So
Yes.
Thank you.
And as far as for the public, anything that I think our current practice is, there's a website called Property Surplus. Property Surplus?
Public surplus?
Public Surplus.
Mike buys lots of stuff on there. I'll tell you all
Okay.
about it. Yeah.
And so I believe the city uses that for most everything that they auction. And if there isn't currently, there will shortly be some sort of link on the city's website to that, because our new policy is going to require that.
Okay.
In the past, it's supposed to be advertised in the newspaper and with a list of everything to be sold, and that's just really not feasible if we can direct the public from our website to the auction site. Any other questions?
Let's see, restated financial policy? What, I guess, what does that mean? I don't understand. Somewhere in here, we
Yeah, so
yeah.
Chapter 3, Budget and Financial Management, there's a lot of basically reorganizing the wording, and I guess restating. Maybe that's, I don't know if that's,
I was thinking it was more like we're putting in something we used to have in it. Never mind.
no,
I misunderstood.
just rewording some things.
Thank you.
And organizing.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions for Brad? I know it's a sort of routine, but Brad went through all this stuff, and I think it's great to look at these policies and procedure manuals and get them updated. So I'd entertain a motion if we had one.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to approve Resolution 2022-04, adopting an amended and restated financial policy and procedure manual.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rojan-Astian, second by Councilmember Hornby to approve Resolution 2022-04, adopting an amended and restated financial policy and procedures manual. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And the second one is the surplus property, which you already dealt with and already discussed, so I'd entertain a motion for adoption of that ordinance as well.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to adopt ordinance number 2022-01, repealing Chapter 1.34 WCC, Wenatchee City Code, disposal of surplus property.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Poyer to adopt ordinance number 2022-01, repealing Chapter 1.34 of the Wenatchee City Code, titled Disposal of Surplus Property. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Alyssa, another change order for downstairs. What's going on? Talk in the microphone so Mark and Keith can hear you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Alyssa Schaefer, Facilities Manager for the Public Works Department. I want to give you a quick update on how the City Hall redevelopment project is coming along, and I also want to present a request for approval on the next change order number 7. The contractor is working hard to keep progress moving forward, although progress has slowed over the past 6 weeks or so as we waited for windows to arrive and the BIM model process to be completed. The good news is the first truckload of windows arrived today, so they will start to be installed on Monday. The BIM process is wrapping up and we should have completed documents next week. Yay. The framing and mechanical rough-in are in place on the first floor with insulation and drywall being installed. Unfortunately, while we were on hold, work on the mezzanine level has been at a standstill while the contractor and their subcontractors and our design consultants all work together to create solutions through the ongoing BIM process. Quick background refresher, as construction began, it was brought to light that the existing structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems were all not in the places that they were thought to be to begin with. The historical as-built information was not accurate, and as a result, the contractor needed to perform a whole building scan to create a new model that we could design the new features around the existing features or relocate the existing features as necessary. That's 84% of what this new contract change order number 7 entails, and it's a direct result of the BIM process. The remaining 16% of change order number 7 is due to some outstanding site work adjustments. Some of the alignments for some street lights weren't matching up, and so we made some modifications in the field. Reconfiguration of some doors that are architecturally in the wrong location. And the employee vestibule needed some work with the existing terrazzo and storefront that goes in there. We added some spray insulation, and the city directed the change to the cooling system for the IS equipment rooms. There was a really small credit for some unnecessary bathroom accessories as well. This change order number 7 amounts to $320,511 plus tax, which will be deducted from the city's contingency fund allocated to the project. The contractor has completed approximately 50% of the work under the contract, and if this change order is approved, the city will have utilized 62% of the allocated contingency funds. This change order also adds 19 days to the project schedule. We are 98% complete with the revised BIM layout, leaving only a handful of additional modifications that will need to be addressed in a future change order. With the finalization of the BIM model, we feel we have a clear understanding of the additional expenses and are currently in final negotiations with regard to these changes. It is our recommendation that the city council approve the contract change order with TW Clark and authorize the mayor's signature.
So we did talk about this at the finance committee, and I think the questions really were, the $1 million of contingency, is that going to be enough? And I think Alyssa was assured that it's going to be close, if not enough. This seems to be the biggest issue at this point, and then the rest of it is, shouldn't expect too many change orders, very small ones.
So what's remaining in our contingency fund?
We have
After, if this
after
gets
this,
passed?
we have 380,000.
This is, I think, probably the biggest one we've done, and it was.
You said we were 50% complete?
With construction installed.
Yeah, with construction installed. So I think this was the one that we expected to be the biggest, just because of the not knowing where stuff was, and some of the air conditioning units on the top floor were bigger than we thought. And when you get the mezzanine level up, they got to redesign some of that stuff. So I think the good news is I don't, it's probably not a fair assessment to say we're 50% done, but we're 62% through our contingency, because we don't expect many contingencies going forward. All the big ones would have been electrical, mechanical, the kinds of ones that we've been dealing with so far. So we wouldn't expect, as for flooring and final fixtures and that stuff, to have a whole bunch of additional change orders they've been budgeted for. This is where you'd expect the big ones. So I think, yes, we're 50% done, we're 60% through our contingent funds, but I don't anticipate us to go really over the contingent funds at this point, unless something completely unforeseen happens. Unless this is assuring me that nothing unforeseen will happen.
So, I got a little confused because I understand 50% installed. Is that the word?
Correct.
And then, but
We've
there's a higher
paid
percentage that's. so
On site.
How much percentage on site?
I don't have
But
that
it's,
number.
but it's a bigger number.
Yeah.
So it's not, it really isn't like.
Equipment being
I get it,
purchased.
50% is like you tacked on the 2x4 that's up, right?
Correct.
But but we have more completed, everything's, we got more stuff not
Coming on the way.
on the way. Got it.
Yeah, we haven't paid for the windows. They're not installed, but they're starting to show up, things like that.
Yeah.
There is equipment, mechanical equipment that needed to be purchased that
Yeah.
hasn't been,
R-
so
Yeah.
they're in the works, that they're not on site.
Yeah, so it is misleading. In my eyes, I don't want to think
We're
50%, I want to say something else.
We're
because-
further ahead of the game, but there's no way to memorialize that number, because we only can go off of what we paid the contractor to date.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But material-wise, how much of the material has actually been purchased at this point? Because we continue to see shortages of material, which are continuing to drive prices up. Do you see any problems with that?
We have a firm price contract, so we don't see the purchasing piece of that. We get a few substitute requests for materials that are not available per the contract documents that we will exchange, but we don't know what that the contractor's in control of those components.
Yeah, the contract that we did, if you remember correctly, we got the bids and we had to hurry and accept it because there was like a 3-week window where the bid was good, because he had bids from all of his subs. And so we rushed in and approved it and got it going. So those prices were fixed to us. So if there's cost increases, right now that's being borne by TW Clark and will be their responsibility, which is the reason why we rushed in and accepted the bid as quickly as he did, because we had a very short window. So I'm assuming he had the same short window with his suppliers, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
I know all the lighting fixtures
I
have
think
been,
that really is key, because the world has just gone kind of upside down for a while with pricing and shipping and everything else. So I think that was good that we did that with them. So
yeah, the fire
just wanted to
station
make sure we were clear on that.
across the street has a warehouse full of lighting.
Yeah. So you're saying when they got the contract, they ordered all the lighting and it's
did.
just sitting in the fire station?
Correct.
Yeah,
So making changes to the lighting at this point
yeah, not
is
happening.
is not, it will
Yeah.
be an added cost to us.
All right, any other questions for Alyssa? Alyssa? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Keith, you good?
I'm good.
Okay, I'll make a motion for city council to approve the contract change order with TW Clark Construction LLC in the amount of $320,511 plus Washington State sales tax and authorize the mayor's signature.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Harold, to approve the contract change order with TW Clark Construction LLC in the amount of $320,511 plus Washington State sales tax and authorize the mayor's signature. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Alyssa. Appreciate all your work downstairs. Leasing of the water right, addendum update. Mr. Jammerman sitting in for Jessica.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rob Jammerman, Public Works Director, on behalf of Jessica Shaw, couldn't be here this evening. So tonight we have the second addendum to the regional water contract with Crown Columbia. We're requesting a motion by council to approve the second addendum. The high flyover on this is that in 2016, we entered into a contract with Crown Columbia to use some of our water rights in our portfolio that we don't currently use. And so if you have water rights in your portfolio that we've purchased over the years, you can broker them on the open market and they can be used by others. And so the agreement allows Crown Columbia to use those for irrigation purposes, and they're selling them to a farmer by the name of Granite Farms down in Walla Walla for row crops. And this addendum is necessary because as part of the contract, Crown Columbia had to get approval with Department of Ecology. They're still working through that, and so we do these what's called a seasonal use permit. And so this is the second addendum required while they're still working out that. So it means that they can use the water, but there's still some negotiation between Crown Columbia and Department of Ecology. The upshot of it is last year they used our water rights, and we received, regional received $222,000 in revenues for the use of that. And so we're just, we're renewing, or this addendum is for the crop year, the growing year of 2022. And we just need council approval. We brought it up at Finance Committee. It does also being approved by our other partners. So East Wenatchee Water District and the PUD also signed this. And it's just more of a matter of housekeeping. I think there was some asking about, well, how much is irrigated? I think there's about, I counted, there's eight circles that they irrigate with this water. And it's the reason, as I think the mayor mentioned earlier, it doesn't go into necessarily like fruit crops, it's row crops, so that if we need the water rights, they're not relying on like the investment of installing like trees for long durations. So, any questions?
Oh, again, this is a bit odd when you're leasing your water to somebody else, but we did it in the past. Obviously, last year it worked out very well. We do have a contract with Crown that sets the price for this stuff. So, and again, our other partners, East Wenatchee Water District and the PUD, have to approve it as well. So, as odd as it is to be leasing water, it's obviously very profitable for us to do so, and is help us reimburse for all of those water rights that Regional has acquired over the years. And Regional spent quite a bit of money acquiring water rights, and so it's nice to get a little return on them until we need them. Any questions for Rob? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move for City Council to approve the second addendum to temporary water right mitigation with Crown Columbia Water Resources, LLC, and authorize the mayor's signature on the agreement and the 2022 seasonal change application.
Second. Motion by Councilmember Harold, second by Councilmember Hornby to approve the second addendum to the temporary water right mitigation with Crown Columbia Water Resources, LLC, and authorize the mayor's signature on the agreement and the 2022 seasonal change application. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Rob. Mayor's report. I'll be brief. I do have one thing I do want to sort of bring up. I won't look at my calendar because I don't really know what I've been doing, but as you've all got some emails regarding a proposed residential development, if you will, in and around the Lutheran Church up at Elliott and Washington Street. I did return some emails today. I know you guys all got some, so I did respond to two. I've gotten 4 or 5, and so I just responded to everybody. And I just want to give you sort of a brief update. For those of you that have been around this business long enough to know, the underlying zoning of that church is residential, and then they have a conditional use permit to operate a church. Not unlike across the street where Washington Elementary School is, that property would also be zoned residential, I think, but as a conditional use permit to operate a school. So if you have additional property that you want to develop, then, you know, if it's a residential development, then you have a legal right to be able to do that. And so the church believes they have additional property there that they want to develop, and they have a legal right to develop under our code, right? Both for land use and development code. Under our land use code, and Glenn will correct all the stuff I messed up, but in essence, we do allow what we would call a tiny home. But that tiny home needs to be on a foundation, right? You can't just wheel it in, wheel it out, and then has to have some architectural sort of integrity and design standards that sort of make sense. And so, but if the church decided to do that, and the tiny homes were on foundations, and they met with our other development code and sewer and all the other connection fees that they would do, this sort of is an allowed use, and it would be something that our planning department would just issue a permit for. But as with any other residential development, you know, you have to have leases that extend longer than 30 days, right? Because we don't allow the short-term rentals. So if they had a tiny home that was there and they leased it to somebody for 9 months, that's well within our code to allow that to take place. So my response to the folks that I emailed was, you know, from a city perspective, it's really a permitting issue, and you know, if they choose to do what they've talked about doing in terms of fitting our code, then their issue is really with the church, because they're the ones that really have the legal right to do that if they so choose to do so. Glenn, did I sort of get that sort of close?
Yeah, you did great, Mayor. It's, the only thing I'd add is they are cottage housing units, and they have design standards for open space, parking, design standards for the homes themselves that they'd have to meet. They're treated as a single-family dwelling unit, and so, as the Mayor mentioned, it's a building permit review process for their issuance.
But not a land use decision, not something that the hearing examiner would see, not something that will come in front of this council really in any way, shape, or form, based on what we're being told they're going to apply for. If they apply for something different, obviously that changes, but based on what we're being told, it sounds like it's an allowed use.
And the only other thing, and they did a pre-application meeting with the city. We have no applications in at this time. In the pre-application meeting, they also talked about in the downstairs area of their church, potentially doing a shelter there for the same purposes. And that would need a conditional use permit, because the difference there is that it's not a single family residential unit. It's a different type of housing. And as such, the way to consider that is through a conditional use permit. So that would go to the hearing examiner, and that would have a notice process and a public hearing. But the individual single-family units as cottage units is just a simple building permit review, design review, utility review process.
Yeah. So those people that have emailed me.
Steve, can I ask a question about the leasing portion? So you're saying that the church would sign a lease to somebody for, let's say, 90 days or 6 months. Is there anything that prevents that person from turning around and subletting it to somebody else? In other words, could an organization lease all of them and sublet them out to other people? or does the agreement specifically say the person who is leasing the place for 6 months has to be also to be the occupier of that?
I'll let Glenn and Steve deal with that. I don't know what our code would say. I mean, I think we just say it's got to be longer than a 30-day lease in order in the residential area, right?
Correct. So we wouldn't be involved in that. The only time we would be involved is if we became aware that rentals or stays of less than 30 days were involved, then at that point it would be a code violation that we would investigate.
Well, in my opinion, this is a gray area in our code because if I lease to somebody and that person unknowingly to me sublet it out to other people or multiple people, this is where we start running into problems. And I know some of the people who have written in have just gone through that on that cul-de-sac in Jefferson, where the person who was supposed to be in charge of the house was then subletting rooms out, and it became a drug house. So I'm wondering if there isn't a way, this is probably a subject for another day, but somehow we have to protect the residents of the neighborhood a little bit better than we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like quite frankly, a contractual matter between the person who owns the property and the person who's leasing it. If it's a code enforcement issue, we're obviously going to be involved in it, but the city doesn't necessarily get involved in legal agreements between other entities, nor do I know that we would be able to restrict that in any manner, but that's something for our city attorney to chime into at some point in time. And I don't think we could have a city code that says you can't sublease your property. Yeah.
Yeah, down the road, we somehow need to address those kind of issues so that neighbors don't have to go through what Jefferson Street just went through.
Yeah, and again, that's a code enforcement issue, and I think, and we're starting to see some of that. We've seen it off and on where even people that own homes will rent out a bedroom or two or three, and in some of those areas, there's not great parking, and we saw it on Brown Street in the past and other streets where all of a sudden, you have 4 people living in a 4-bedroom home and they all got cars, and that's a problem, right? Or you're starting to see that as you have a housing issue, you're starting to see some of that take place. But those are sort of code enforcement issues, at least in my opinion. I don't know that there's any other way for us to enforce that.
And it's not really a violation of code for someone to have 3 roommates and rent out those rooms.
Right.
So that can occur.
Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted you guys to know that we're monitoring the situation. I did email those folks back. Feel free to email them if you want. I don't think this is over in the public eye yet, but just wanted you to know where we sit in terms of what the allowed uses are on that property.
But Mayor, you talk about loud uses, and that's the key. We can't, no matter what our personal feelings are, we don't have that responsibility. We cannot do anything else but what our rules are.
Right.
And that's it doesn't matter, and we have to take it as a whole. So you can't piece this off one party. I can't pick on you and not pick on somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think I need to keep that in the back of my mind. It's overall.
Yeah, I mean, if they were building 3 duplexes, would you look at it differently, right? Residential zone, 3 duplexes, rent them out for a period of time, right? I mean, that, in essence, is an allowed use in our residential zone, right? And we will monitor the situation. We will do the best we can, but I'm trying to be as upfront with the neighbors who basically want us to stop it, right? And it's our job to stop it when I think legally we have to monitor it, but I just don't think we have the ability just to, because that approval process will not come in front of not only this body, but even our hearing examiner. So, all right. That was really all I had. I did meet with the museum folks. They've got some architects in trying to look at some redesign of the museum. So they've got a little plan together. They'll be wanting, I'm sure, some city participation in some form or another. It's a very interesting plan. That was last week. I did that. What else have I been doing? We have been meeting with staff a little bit about, there's all sorts of infrastructure money that's coming through the federal government, and we're trying to figure out how to grab some of that for actually building the Confluence Bridge, right, the Confluence Parkway Bridge, and get the second phase done. So we've met with Senator Murray's staff, Jeannie and others on an approach to do that. We are going to be meeting in a couple of weeks with Chelan County PUD. We'll keep you updated, sort of getting close to the final processes on the environmental work, but we do need their buy-off. And so we will be having a meeting with them on February 7th. If you see any of your PUD commissioners around, encourage them to support and buy off on all the environmental work that we've been working on. So it's a very crucial step in this process. So that happens hopefully over the next 4 or 5 weeks. Laura, anything to add? If you saw in the newspaper, we did hand out our social justice awards to Pinnacles Prep and to Elvis Garcia, so that was great. And thanks for whoever did the press release on that. That was awesome.
Just another legislative item. Senator Hawkins reached out regarding the city's pool predicament and encouraged us to apply for funding through their capital program. So Dave applied for $533,000 through that program. I also reached out to Representative Steele and Gaynor's office in kind of coordination efforts, and they also encouraged us to do the same. So that's an opportunity, hopefully, to get some additional funding for the pool liner project. Other than that, we have a planning commission vacancy. So if you know anyone who is interested, applications are online, and those can be sent over to Tammy and then routed to community development. That's it.
Great. Anything, council members, on your various committees?
Did anyone attend City Action Days today?
I did not, no.
I did. It was a virtual conference, and it was very interesting. The governor spoke. He's very optimistic on lots of changes. And let me see here. I got some notes. Okay, he put $100 million into utilities, he said, and he's also putting large investments into increasing housing. And there's a focus on rapid rehousing. He suggested tiny homes or purchasing old hotels and turning them into housing. He said we need to build more housing, especially for middle income and low income. People are moving here at a rapid rate, faster than what we can build houses, and we are running out of land. He said we need to concentrate on changing our codes so that we can have more
Can we annex Oregon or
dense
something? How do you
housing,
do
which
that
we
when you run
did
out of
do
land?
that. So,
Can we annex Oregon or Idaho? How does that work?
yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Anyway, zoning laws currently prohibit this, so he says they need to be a change. And a change would allow more apartments and low-income housing. And then I sat in on the one where the lobbyists, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but they talked about various different bills that they feel are very important and some that they're opposing. And it's very interesting, very educational. If you have, as always, they stress, if you have strong feelings about something, make sure you contact your legislatures and let them know.
We've been following most of the legislation fairly closely. There's lots going on. There's lots of bills that are sort of adding flexibility to some of the hotel motel tax, some of the 09 funds, so there's just a lot of bills regarding flexibility. Whether any of them ever get to the finish line, who knows in a short session, but we are monitoring them very closely. Yeah. I have not testified yet on any of the bills. There was one, then it got changed to something else, and so I've sort of stayed out of it. Hopefully there'll be a time when it gets closer to a finish line where, having us chime in would be more beneficial. So I've sort of stayed out of the initial stuff on most of those.
We also had our first quarterly meeting of the Columbia River Homeless Task Force.
Excellent.
And I went through the bike laws. They were approved with some changes. There was a concern about the quorum, and they're going to do some more research on that. We
Okay.
elected officers. Pretty much that's it. And we will be meeting again soon, because as soon as we hear back from Salvation Army, hopefully in the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
we'll be meeting to talk about that.
And we'll get back to you guys as soon as we hear from them, and we'll be keeping the council posted on how that goes.
Yeah.
Jose, Mike?
Yes.
Top? Yeah.
I have three things. On Monday, I had the disability committee. So we reviewed and renewed the policy rates for the
Okay.
insurance. Secondly, I met with Commissioner Overbay, and we were talking about South Mission and Terminal Street intersection. He's going to talk with his public works and see what we can do.
Okay.
And finally, tomorrow I got invited to the Pinnacles Prep.
Oh, good.
They're going to give me a tour. I felt really privileged. They said since I'm their council member for that district,
Mhm.
I should be there. So
Good.
I'm going to be there tomorrow.
They're doing a great job.
Yes, that's what I heard.
Mike, anything to add? Top?
Yeah, I went to a 3 committee meetings since our last meeting. The first one was Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce. It was cool. They're still looking for executive director. Do that. Same thing that you said about there being a lot of bills right now. I'm not sure what will actually make it.
Yeah.
But I know the Senator Hawkins bill for the hotel tax thing, that's
Yep.
probably not, that's not going to happen, but they're changing it to get the money from somewhere else. Just some information with the local industries. Todd, who runs Honda,
Yep.
talking about how very low inventory on cars, and then used cars are really inflated right now. So that kind of is going on. That kind of paired into the what's it called, the LTAC committee and
Yep.
TPA. And so
Getting all the symbols down right.
yeah, working on,
Yeah.
yeah. So the biggest thing I took from that meeting is they're considering a restructuring of, right now they're joint on a lot of things, but
Yep.
they're considering focusing on separate things again. And then the other meeting was the health district meeting. And there was, most of it's about COVID. I just was really interested in seeing the numbers. So right now it's 100% pretty much of the hospitalizations is this Omicron variant. And then another interesting number is right now the Town Toyota Center there's a lot of testing. They're averaging 800 people a day. And with that, it's 30% more positive results.
That's an instant testing, by the way.
Yes.
And it's free. So,
That's
yeah.
exactly. And also going with that, they're starting a program, a library program that's going to be handing out free ATKs and masks. And then, and the one big number, which I thought was crazy, is of the people hospitalized, it's 13 to 1 deaths, 13 times more deaths unvaxxed people versus vaccinated people. So that was a kind of a big number for me. But yeah, it was really cool sitting in on these and learning about all that.
Good.
That's it.
Well, thanks for going to those and participating and representing the city. Keith, Mark, anything?
Yeah, Top, I wanted to thank Top for jumping in and going to chamber meeting for me the other day. It would have been difficult for me being 2 hours behind to get in on that one. I'm curious, Top, about health department. I keep seeing requests that I'm reading about that they're getting overwhelmed at Town Toyota. They're saying you still need an appointment. Did that come up at all in the meeting?
It did, but the biggest problem right now is actually getting test kits. So they were promised 40,000 test kits and only got 10,000. And as same as the next order, they don't think they're going to get what they're promised. I think it's because of supply chain things. So right now they're just doing their best, but they do predict that they will run out of tests and they'll have to maybe focus on certain people getting tests and not everyone, is what they said.
I was at the Town Toyota Center today for a noon meeting on the board of the Public Facility District. And there was 2 cars in the testing line. So it was not busy today.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it wasn't other days, it just wasn't today.
I think that's because they've had to cancel appointments.
Okay. Travis, anything from you?
2 quick things. Was with Laura and Rob, we met with Tesla. They're looking at possibly 12 superchargers someplace in Wenatchee, to be determined yet. So maybe some information coming out in the next few months. And then met with Rivercom. I did a quick tour, as well as sat down with the new finance director, as well as the new executive director. Looks like they have a decent path forward. So
Good.
morale's changed, so they have a decent plan. So looks up there.
Good.
That's it.
Okay. Anybody else for the good of the order? So we don't meet next week, so our next meeting would be on Thursday, the 10th. With no other business, we're adjourned.